I froze in the doorway, my breath catching like a fist had slammed into my chest. My son, my baby, Zion Holt, was on his knees on a restroom floor, scrubbing a damn toilet with a rag. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, his good suit, the one he bought just last week, was soaked and stained with gray soap water. And standing over him, laughing like a devil in a tailored suit, was his father-in-law, Richard Pierce, the man who owned this whole building, this whole company. "Look at him," Richard shouted, his deep voice echoing off the tiles. "Your big college boy, 30 years old, honors degree, and all he's good for is this." He turned toward the door, talking to someone behind him. "Naomi, baby girl, come see what your husband's really made of." Naomi Pierce appeared in the doorway, beautiful, polished, untouched by the filth around her. She leaned against the frame, smiling. Just stood there smiling, watching her own man humiliated like a nobody. "Naomi?" Zion's voice cracked. He looked up at her, his eyes red, desperate. "Tell them this ain't right, right?" she said, tilting her head. "What's right, Zion? Living on a broke man's salary forever? Daddy's teaching you something important. You start from the bottom, even if it's the bathroom floor." Richard burst out laughing. Bottom's exactly where he belongs. He kicked the bucket beside Zion, sending dirty water splashing across my son's legs. "Oops, guess you'll have to mop that up too, son-in-law." The two men beside him, polished business types, chuckled behind their hands. Naomi just shrugged like she didn't see anything wrong, and then Zion saw me. Our eyes met, and I swear I felt my heart split clean in two. The pain in his gaze was something no mother should ever have to see. "Mama," he whispered, his voice small, broken. Tears streaked down his face, cutting through the grime on his cheeks. I wanted to move, to snatch him up, to shield him, but my body wouldn't obey. I stood there frozen, trembling, my nails digging into my palms. Richard turned toward me. "Well, look who it is, Mrs. Holt, right on time. Look at your hardworking boy, first day and already shining toilets." Even his business partners went quiet then. They felt the shift, that line he'd crossed. Maybe that's enough. Richard, one of them muttered, but Richard just clapped his hands. "Nah, Zion, finish up in here. I want it spotless in an hour. You got a 3-month probation period. Fail it, and you're out, and Naomi'll be without a husband or a provider." They walked past me like I was invisible, Richard, his partners, and my daughter-in-law with that damn smug smile still on her lips. When the door shut, all that was left was the sound of my son's rag against tile and his quiet sobs. He was sitting on the floor in a puddle, trembling, the rag limp in his hand. "Mama," he choked, not looking up. "I'm sorry. You shouldn't have seen this. I'm so ashamed." I went to him, knelt down, and pulled him into my arms, just like when he was a little boy who scraped his knee. "Zion, get up," I said softly but firmly. "We're leaving right now." He shook his head, tears falling onto my shoulder. "I can't, Mama. Naomi said if I quit on the first day, she'd leave me. I promised her. I gave her my word." I cupped his face in my hands. "Baby, listen to me. These people are breaking you on purpose. They're turning you into their servant. This is just the start, you hear me? If you stay, it's only gonna get worse." He looked away, his jaw trembling. "But I have to, Mama. I'm her husband. I gotta provide for my family." "Not like this, Zion," I said through clenched teeth. "Not at this price." But I saw it in his eyes, that mix of pride and pain. He wasn't leaving. He'd endure it. For love, for his vows, for some twisted idea of manhood. So I stood, walked out of that building into the cold air, shaking. Cars passed. People laughed on the sidewalk. The world kept moving like nothing had happened. But inside me, something was burning, slow, deep. Unstoppable, my only son, the child I'd sacrificed my whole life for, was on his knees cleaning toilets while his own wife and her daddy laughed at him. Right there. On that street, I made a promise. I wasn't gonna let them break him. I pulled out my phone. In my contacts, there was one name, a man who had once helped me when I was alone, scared. With nothing but a baby in my arms that I dialed. Darius Vaughn speaking. Came the calm voice I hadn't heard in decades. Mr. Vaughn. It's Aisha Holt. You remember me? A pause, then warmth. I say Holt. Of course I remember. How you been? How's Zion? Bad, Mr. Vaughn. Real bad. I need your help. Please, can you see me today? I can. Come now, he said. That was all I needed. Because in that moment, standing on the sidewalk outside Pierce Industrial, I wasn't just a mother anymore. I was a storm coming for the man who humiliated my child, and I was going to make sure Richard Pierce paid with everything he had and everything he thought he was. Before I tell you how it all fell apart, you need to know how it all began with me. And with the baby boy I refused to let this world destroy. I was 28 when I gave birth to my son, Zion Holt. Back then, I believe life was finally coming together. We had a small 2-room apartment on the south side of Atlanta, a man I thought I could trust, and a newborn baby who smelled like heaven. We didn't have much peeling paint on the walls, a secondhand couch, a crib from a yard sale, but it was ours. I'd wake up every morning and thank God for that simple peace. Then one morning, I found a note on the kitchen table. Just 3 lines written in a shaky hand. I'm sorry. I can't do this. Don't look for me. No explanation. No goodbye kiss. Just silence in a crib that still smelled like milk. The man I trusted, the father of my child, had walked out without even saying my name. For days, I moved like a ghost. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I'd just sit by that crib watching Zion breathe, wondering how the hell I was supposed to raise him alone. Then one night, while holding that baby in the crook of my arm, it hit me like a voice from somewhere deep inside. You ain't got nobody but you, and he's counting on you to stand up. So I did. I took every job I could find. Mornings, I worked the register at a corner grocery store. Afternoons, I cleaned offices downtown, scrubbing desks, emptying trash, wiping fingerprints off glass doors. Nights, I mopped stairwells and apartment buildings till my back screamed. I'd get home after midnight, feed Zion, collapse for maybe 4 hours, and start again. Sometimes, I'd catch my reflection in the mirror, eyes red, hands raw from bleach, and I'd whisper, just keep going, girl. He needs you. Every dollar I made went straight to keeping the lights on and Zion's stomach full. When other women bought themselves new shoes or went out on Fridays, I'd save for his baby clothes and formula. The only thing I ever bought for myself was coffee, because without it, I wouldn't have survived. When he started kindergarten, I wanted him to walk in there looking just as proud as the other kids. So I saved for 6 months, skipped new clothes, skipped bus rides, walked to work when it rained, just so I could buy him a clean new backpack and shoes that didn't squeak with every step. That morning, when I saw him standing there in his little red polo and khakis, grinning with his missing front tooth, I felt like I'd won a war. That was my victory. Zion grew up fast, too fast maybe. He never complained about the small things other kids took for granted. When I came home bone tired, he'd help fold laundry or bring me water. Sometimes I'd catch him watching me, those serious brown eyes full of understanding no child should have. He knew we didn't have money for toys. He knew every dime mattered. And yet, he never once asked for more. One night, when he was about 10, he came to me while I was ironing uniforms. "Mama," he said, "when I grow up, I'm going to study hard. I'm going to get a good job so you never have to work this hard again." I smiled through tears. That's sweet, baby, but don't you worry about me? He shook his head. No, Mama, I promise. And you know what? My boy kept that promise. Years flew by. He made honor roll every semester, graduated top of his class, and got a full scholarship to Clark Atlanta University. I cried like a fool at that graduation, not from sadness, but from the kind of pride that fills your chest till it hurts. Every sleepless night, every scrubbed floor, every dollar stretched thin, it all led to that moment. When Zion earned his degree, I felt like I'd finally done something right. He wasn't just smart, he was kind, grounded, and grateful. Everything I prayed for him to be. Right after college, he landed his first real job at a company called Peach State Logistics. It wasn't glamorous, mostly paperwork and route coordination, but it was honest work. The salary was modest, around $1,900 a month, but you'd think he'd won the lottery. He called me that night, his voice lit up with pride. Mama, they hired me. Full-time, benefits, the whole thing. I couldn't stop smiling. That's my boy. I'm so proud of you. I'm gonna help you now, he said. Every month, you can finally rest. I laughed, wiping my eyes. You don't have to do that, Zion. You've got your own life to build. Yes, I do, he said firmly. You worked your whole life for me. Now it's my turn. And he meant it. Every month, he sent me $400. He didn't live fancy, shared apartment, simple meals, but he made sure his mama was okay. Because of him, I could finally quit one of my cleaning jobs. For the first time in decades, I had evenings free. I'd sit on my couch, turn on some soft music, and just breathe. Every Sunday, Zion came over for dinner. We'd cook, laugh, and talk about his work, how he was learning to manage shipments, build routes, and plan logistics like a pro. He'd say, one day, Mama, I'm gonna run my own department. Maybe even my own company. I'd pat his hand and smile. You will, baby? Everything in its time. 6 months passed. He got a small raise, started looking more confident, more sure of himself. Life finally felt steady, peaceful. I thought the worst was behind us, that all the struggle, all the heartbreak, had finally led us somewhere safe, but I was wrong, because peace has a way of fooling you. It makes you believe storms are gone when really, they're just circling out of sight, waiting for the right moment to hit. And when it came for us, it came dressed in love. A woman named Naomi Pierce. It was a quiet October evening when my phone rang. I was folding laundry and humming to myself when I heard his voice, excited, breathless, almost glowing. Mama, Zion said, are you sitting down? I smiled. I am now. What happened? I met somebody. For a second, I just froze, a half-folded towel in my hands. My heart skipped, then fluttered, half joy, half worry. Every mother dreams of that moment when her child finds love. But for some reason, hearing it from him made a strange kind of chill run through me. Oh, really? I said lightly, trying to sound calm. Tell me about her. Her name's Naomi, he said, his voice lifting like the word itself was made of gold. Naomi Pierce. She came to our office for a business meeting. She works in marketing at her father's company. Mama, she's incredible. Beautiful, educated, confident. I still don't know what she saw in me. That last sentence sat heavy in my chest. Didn't know what she saw in him. My son was one of the finest young men I'd ever known. Kind, intelligent, well-spoken, respectful. If she couldn't see his worth, she didn't deserve him. But I swallowed my worry. Well, if she saw that in you, she's got good sense, I said, with a smile he couldn't see. He laughed softly. I want you to meet her, Mama. Saturday. There's this little coffee shop downtown. We can all go together. Of course, I said. I'd love to. After I hung up, I sat there a long while, quiet. I should have felt pure happiness. My boy had found love, but something in me wouldn't rest. Maybe it was fear of being left behind. Maybe it was something else. A mother's instinct whispering that this wasn't the kind of woman who came from our world. Still, Saturday came and I dressed as best I could, pressed my nicest blouse, brushed out my hair, dabbed on a bit of lipstick. I wanted to look decent, respectable. The mother of a man any woman would be lucky to have. I got there early. My hands wouldn't stop fidgeting around the coffee cup. Then the door opened. Zion walked in with her, and my heart sank just a little. Naomi Pierce was stunning. The kind of beautiful that turns heads. Long dark hair falling perfectly over her shoulders, flawless makeup, a tailored cream dress, and a designer bag that probably cost more than my car. She didn't just walk into a room, she owned it. Zion's face lit up like sunlight. He held her hand, proud and nervous all at once. Mama, this is Naomi. Naomi, my mother, Aisha Holt. Naomi extended a manicured hand, her nails shaped like pearls. Her smile was polite but cold, the kind of smile people give when they're pretending to be nice. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Holt, she said. Her tone was sugar over steel. Her eyes scanned me from head to toe, quiet judgment flickering like she was assessing what I was worth. I smiled anyway and shook her hand. Pleasure's mine, sweetheart. We sat down. Zion talked nonstop about how they'd met at a business meeting, how she was brilliant, confident, worldly. Naomi nodded now and then but barely spoke. Every time I tried to make small talk, asked about her job, her hobbies, what she liked to do, she gave short, sharp answers. I work in marketing, she said, glancing at her phone. At my father's company, Pierce Industrial Group, we produce high-end manufacturing components for construction. One of the biggest in the region. She said it like a trophy she'd won. I smiled politely. That sounds impressive. You must be proud. I am, she said simply, sipping her coffee, eyes drifting over the shop like she didn't belong there. That was the moment I felt it, the distance. The invisible wall between her world and ours. She came from money, power, comfort, and we came from hard work, calloused hands, long hours, and gratitude for every dollar. When the meeting ended, Zion walked me to the bus stop. So, he asked with that hopeful grin, what do you think of her? I looked at his face, the way his eyes softened every time he said her name, and I couldn't break that hope. So I lied a little. She seems fine, baby. The important thing is that she loves you. He hugged me tight. She does, Mama. She really does. I smiled, but inside, something trembled. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying the way Naomi looked at me, not like a person, but like a problem she'd already solved. 3 months later, Zion called again, his voice filled with excitement. Mama, she said yes. Yes to what? I proposed. I dropped the spoon I was holding. Already? Mama, she's the one. You'll see. We're getting married in June. I wanted to be happy. I really did. But deep down, something in my chest went cold. The wedding was held at her parents' estate or mansion, really on the north side of Atlanta. Gates taller than houses. Marble floors, chandeliers that looked like glass waterfalls. Paintings on the walls worth more than my life savings. When I stepped inside, I felt like I'd walked into another planet, one where money was air and I couldn't breathe it. I stood near the back, clutching my small purse, trying not to look out of place. Then a tall man approached, suit sharp enough to cut glass. His presence filled the room, commanding, heavy, confident. You must be the groom's mother, he said, not asking, stating double quotes, yes, I said, forcing a smile. Aisha Holt. He didn't smile back, didn't offer his hand. Just look down at me. Richard Pierce, Naomi's father. The name hit me like thunder. The Richard Pierce, CEO of Pierce Industrial. I hope your son understands the honor being bestowed upon him, he said coolly. Being accepted into our family is no small thing. I felt something twist in my stomach. Honor? My son was educated, hardworking, decent, and this man was acting like he'd just done charity. My son is worthy of your daughter, I said quietly. He smirked. We'll see. Naomi's used to a certain lifestyle. I hope your Zion can provide it. His voice dropped lower, mocking. Judging by where he works, I have my doubts. My throat burned, but I swallowed it. This was Zion's wedding day. I wouldn't ruin it. The ceremony was beautiful. Flowers everywhere, music soft and elegant, people dressed like royalty. Zion looked so happy standing beside her, eyes full of dreams. But as the evening wore on, I saw how Richard's friends looked at him like he was an uninvited guest at their exclusive table. Later, while walking past the terrace, I overheard Richard talking with another man. Well, Richard, the man laughed. You've married off your daughter, huh? Richard chuckled. Married off is right. The boy works at some small-time logistics company, makes pennies. But no matter. We'll fix him. A little training, a little discipline. Maybe he'll become something after all. They both laughed, and I froze to him. My son wasn't family. He was a project. That night, as fireworks cracked over the estate, I stood at the edge of the crowd and whispered to myself, this man will break my son if I let him. But at the time, I still didn't know just how right I was, because that beautiful girl from another world, the one with the perfect smile and flawless skin, was about to turn my son's dream into a nightmare. The Pierce estate looked like something pulled straight out of a dream. Not the kind of dream you wake up smiling from, but the kind that leaves you uneasy. The gates were taller than some houses I'd cleaned in my life. The driveway curved for nearly half a mile, lined with white roses and black limousines. When my Uber rolled up to the main entrance, I could already hear the soft hum of violins floating through the air. Zion had told me it would be fancy. But this wasn't fancy. This was royalty. I stood at the base of the marble steps, clutching my purse, feeling like a trespasser. My dress, the one I'd saved 2 whole months' wages to buy, suddenly felt cheap. Still, I lifted my chin, adjusted my shawl, and whispered, You raised a good man. That's what matters. Inside, the place glowed. Crystal chandeliers spilled light over white orchids and tables draped in gold cloth. The air smelled like money and privilege, that particular mix of expensive perfume and entitlement. I spotted Zion across the hall. My baby looked so proud in his tuxedo, handsome, strong, trying to hold his own among people who'd never worked a day of hard labor in their lives. When our eyes met, he smiled, and for a moment, I forgot where we were. Then a voice broke that peace. You must be the groom's mother. I turned. The man standing before me was tall, broad-shouldered, his suit so sharp it looked like it could cut through air. Richard Pierce, Naomi's father. I'd seen him in photos before, but in person, his presence filled the room. The kind of man used to power and used to people bowing under it. Yes, I said, keeping my voice steady. Aisha Holt. He didn't smile, didn't offer his hand. Just looked down at me, assessing, judging. I hope your son understands the honor being bestowed upon him by joining our family. That word, honor, stuck like a thorn in my throat. My son is worthy of your daughter. I said quietly. Richard's lips twitched, not quite a smile, more like amusement. We'll see. Naomi's used to a certain lifestyle. I hope Zion can provide it. Though, judging by where he works, he didn't finish the sentence. But I heard it all the same. I wanted to tell him that my son had built himself from nothing, that he'd worked harder in 1 year than some men did their whole lives. But I bit my tongue. This was Zion's day. I wouldn't ruin it. The ceremony itself was stunning, flawless, expensive, soulless. Naomi floated down the grand staircase like a goddess. Her gown shimmered with crystals, her hair pinned with pearls. People gasped, phones clicked, and for a moment, even I couldn't deny how breathtaking she looked. Zion stood waiting at the altar, his face full of love and pride. When Naomi reached him, she smiled, a perfect practice smile. "I do," she said, voice steady, rehearsed. When it was over, when the cheers and applause filled the air, I tried to hold on to hope. Maybe, just maybe, she'd love him the way he deserved. Maybe her father would come around. But later, while walking past the terrace, I overheard something that shattered that illusion. Well, Richard, a gray-haired man, chuckled, lighting a cigar. "You've married off your daughter? Congratulations." Richard laughed, low and smug. "Married off is right. Boy works for some small logistics firm, makes pennies. But no matter. We'll fix him. A little discipline, a little training. Maybe he'll become something worth looking at." They both laughed like it was a joke. My heart went cold. Fix him? Train him? My son wasn't a project. He was a person. A good man. That night, while others danced and toasted champagne, I stood at the edge of the hall watching Zion laugh with his new bride. He was glowing, hopeful, unaware of the storm waiting behind her family's perfect smiles. After the wedding, life moved fast. Zion and Naomi rented a small apartment on the north side of Atlanta, a clean, polished neighborhood with manicured lawns and rent that nearly swallowed half his salary. When he called, his tone was cheerful but thin. "Everything's fine, Mama. Don't worry." But I could hear the strain between the words. 2 months later, I couldn't stand it anymore. I baked a sweet potato pie, grabbed some fruit, and took the bus across town. When Zion opened the door, my heart clenched. He looked worn, his cheeks hollow, his eyes shadowed. "Rome, are you sleeping at all?" I asked, pressing my palm to his forehead. "I'm fine, Mama," he said, forcing a smile. "Just working hard." He stepped aside. "Come in. Naomi will be happy to see you." But when I walked into that sleek, spotless apartment, Naomi didn't even look up. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling her phone. "Hello, Mrs. Holt," she said flatly. "Hi, baby." "I brought pie. Thought we could have tea together." "Thank you," she murmured without glancing up. "I'm on a detox." "Zion, put it in the fridge." Zion obeyed silently. I sat down, trying to ignore the chill in the air. The place was beautiful. Marble counters, white furniture, everything in its place, but it didn't feel like home. It felt like a showroom. "How's married life treating you?" I asked softly. "It's fine," Naomi said, setting her phone aside. "Though I wish the apartment were bigger. But, we can't afford more on Zion's salary." The way she said "we can't afford" sliced through the room. "Zion earns well for his age," I said, my voice tight but calm. "He's got a good head on his shoulders. He'll go far." Naomi laughed lightly. "He's 30, Mrs. Holt. Most of my friends' husbands are running their own departments. Some already own businesses. Zion's still scheduling trucks." I saw Zion's jaw tighten as he walked out of the kitchen. "Naomi, we talked about this," he said quietly. "Not in front of my mother." "What?" "I'm just saying facts." She stood up, her tone sharp. "My father offered you a position at his company, a real job, but you're too proud to take it." "I want to earn my way," Zion said, his hands shaking slightly. "I don't want to live off your father's pity." "It's not pity, it's opportunity. Everyone uses connections, Zion, everyone." She threw her hands up. You'd rather have us stuck here forever just because you've got principles? Taylor, I started, but she cut me a cold look that made me stop. With all due respect, Mrs. Holt, she said, you worked hard your whole life and have nothing to show for it. That's not success, but stubbornness. You should want better for your son. Zion's voice cracked. Don't talk to my mother like that. She shrugged. Then act like a man and take my father's offer. The silence after that was thick enough to choke on. I stood. I think I'll go. Mama. Zion tried to reach for me, but I shook my head. No, baby. You two need to figure this out. On the bus ride home, I cried quietly, staring out the window as the city lights blurred past. I finally admitted what my heart had been trying to tell me for months. This marriage was a mistake. Naomi didn't love my son, not truly. She loved what he could become, what he might earn, what he represented. After that, Zion started calling late at night, when Naomi was asleep or gone. His voice always sounded small, tired. Mama, she keeps saying I'm a failure, he'd whisper. She compares me to her friends' husbands. Says she married down. Do you love her? I'd ask. He'd pause, the line quiet for too long. I loved who I thought she was. Then maybe it's time to walk away? No, Mama, I made vows. I have to fix this. Maybe if I take her father's offer, things will get better. Don't do it for her, I begged. Do it only if you believe in it. But I knew he didn't. I could hear it. That heaviness in his voice, that resignation. 2 weeks later, he called again. Mama, I decided. I'm meeting with Mr. Pierce tomorrow. Naomi says it's the grown-up thing to do. The words chilled me to the bone. Baby, please think this through. I already have, he said softly. I can't lose her. And I knew then, this wasn't about a job anymore. This was about love turned into leverage. That night, I prayed harder than I ever had before. I prayed her father wouldn't see my son's kindness as weakness. I prayed Zion would come out of that meeting with his dignity intact, but deep down, I knew men like Richard Pierce didn't offer opportunities. They offered traps. The days after Zion's meeting with Richard, Pierce felt different, quiet, heavy and wrong in ways I couldn't explain. He told me about the job offer, his voice trembling between pride and fear. Assistant logistics manager at Pierce Industrial Group, $3,800 a month. On paper, it sounded good, double what he'd been earning at Peach State Logistics. But something about it didn't sit right with me, still. When I looked at his face that night, the spark in his eyes, the hope that maybe he'd finally prove himself to Naomi's family, I didn't have the heart to crush it. Maybe this is your chance, I said softly. But baby, watch how that man moves. Don't trust his kindness. Zion laughed weakly. You worry too much, Mama. It's just a job. But I knew better. For a few weeks, Naomi acted like a different woman. She was affectionate again, cooking him dinner, sending him little texts while he worked, even bragging to her friends that her husband had joined the family business. But every time I spoke to Zion, I could hear the nerves underneath the surface. Mama, he said one night over the phone, what if I can't handle it? Pierce Industrial's huge. They build parts for companies all over the state. I've never managed people before. You'll learn, I told him. You've handled worse. He sighed. I just want to make her proud. I want her father to respect me. That sentence, I want her father to respect me, made something twist deep in my chest. Respect from a man like Richard Pierce came with a price. The weekend before his first day, Zion came over for dinner. I made fried catfish and collard greens, his favorite. He ate slow, quiet, like he was lost in his thoughts. Big day Monday, I said, watching him. He nodded. Yeah, I've been reading up on the company, their product lines, their suppliers, how their logistics department runs. I want to walk in there ready. That's my boy, I smiled. Always prepared. But even as I spoke, the pit in my stomach grew heavier. When he left that night, I stood by the door watching him go, praying under my breath, Lord, please don't let that man break my son. Monday came at 10:12 a.m. My phone rang. I saw Zion's name on the screen, but the sound that came through wasn't his usual voice. It was cracked, trembling, drowning in something I couldn't name. Mama. He sobbed. Please. Please come. Zion. Baby, what happened? Where are you? At the office. I'm so ashamed. I can't. I'm on my way, I said, grabbing my purse before he could finish. When I burst into the glass lobby of Pierce Industrial, I was shaking. The receptionist tried to stop me, but one look at my face must have told her not to. I went straight up the elevator, calling my son's name down every hallway until I heard it. Laughter. Deep. Cruel laughter. It came from behind a door marked restroom. Employees only. I pushed it open, and there he was. My son, my Zion, kneeling on the floor with a rag in his hand, scrubbing a toilet while Richard Pierce stood above him with two men in suits, laughing like it was a show. Come on, boy, Richard barked. You missed a spot. That's what happens when you skip the basics. The men beside him chuckled. One whispered, You actually hired him for this? Richard smirked. Every empire needs someone to keep the foundation clean. He's learning the business from the ground up, literally. They laughed again. Zion's hands shook as he tried to clean faster, tears falling down his face. His suit, the same gray one he'd ironed the night before, was soaked. His face was streaked with sweat and humiliation. Mr. Pierce, he pleaded softly. You said assistant manager. Richard leaned down, his voice a mock whisper. And you are an assistant to the janitor. Didn't say which department you'd manage, did I? The men roared with laughter, and then I heard another voice, one that froze my blood. Daddy's right. Naomi. She was standing in the doorway. Arms folded, a smile tugging at her lips. Naomi. Zion's voice cracked. Tell them this isn't right. She tilted her head, feigning innocence. What's not right, baby? Everyone starts somewhere. Daddy's just showing you what real work looks like. He stared at her like he didn't recognize her anymore. Richard kicked over the mop bucket, splashing dirty water across my son's legs. Better get that too, son-in-law. Don't want Naomi slipping on your tears. That was it. I stepped forward, my hands shaking. But before I could speak, Richard turned, spotting me. Well, look who we have here, he said, smiling wide. Mrs. Holt, right on time. Look at your boy, first day and already working hard. The two men fell silent. Even they could feel it, the line he'd just crossed. Maybe that's enough. Richard, one muttered. Richard ignored him. Zion, finish up. I want this restroom spotless by the time I'm back. 3-month probation, fail it, and you're out. And Naomi, he turned to his daughter, find yourself a real husband if that happens. They left, laughing. Naomi glanced back once, and still she smiled. When the door shut, only the sound of Zion's quiet crying remained. Mama, he whispered, I'm sorry. You shouldn't have seen this. I dropped to my knees beside him, pulled him into my arms. His whole body trembled. Baby, get up. We're leaving. Right now. He shook his head. I can't. Naomi said if I quit, she's gone. Zion, I said, grabbing his face, listen to me. These people are breaking you on purpose. This is abuse. If you stay, they'll destroy you. He looked down, his voice barely a whisper. But I made vows, Mama. I have to be a man. I have to provide. I felt my throat close. Not like this, baby. Not on your knees. But I saw it in his eyes. He wasn't coming with me, so I stood up, walked out, and stood on that street with my hands shaking so hard I could barely dial my phone. I didn't cry. Not yet. My tears had turned to fire. I scrolled through my contacts until I found one name, a man who once helped me when I had nothing but a baby and a broken heart. I hit call. Darius Vaughn speaking. Came the deep, steady voice from the other end. Mr. Vaughn, it's Aisha Holt. You remember me? A pause, then warmth. Aisha Holt, of course I do. It's been years. How are you? How's Zion? Not good, I said, my voice shaking. I need your help. He didn't hesitate. Come see me right now. And that was all I needed to hear, because at that moment, I stopped being just Zion's mother. I became the storm that was going to bring Richard Pierce's empire down, brick by brick, dollar by dollar, lie by lie, until he was the one left kneeling on a cold, dirty floor. The morning after that phone call with Mr. Vaughn, I barely slept. The image of my son kneeling on that bathroom floor kept replaying in my mind like a film I couldn't turn off. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his trembling hands, that look of shame burning in his face. When the sun rose, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the coffee going cold in front of me. I wasn't thinking about breakfast. I wasn't thinking about work. I was thinking about how I'd spent 30 years teaching my son to stand tall, and how one man had stripped that from him in a single morning. I didn't cry anymore. That part of me was gone. What sat in me now was something else. Quiet, sharp, deliberate. I got dressed in silence, pulled on my long black coat, and walked out the door. Mr. Darius Vaughn lived on the edge of downtown Atlanta in a brownstone that looked the same as it had 20 years ago. Solid, sturdy, and full of secrets. He'd been a mentor once, a businessman, a fighter, the kind of man people didn't cross unless they had a death wish. When he opened the door, he smiled faintly. His hair was grayer now, his shoulders a little heavier, but his presence was still commanding. Aisha Holt, he said, stepping aside. You look like you've been through a war. I have, I said quietly. Walking in, he poured me coffee without asking, the same way he used to years ago when I worked as his assistant in his small trucking company. Back then, I'd been a single mother desperate for a chance. He'd given me one, taught me everything about business, contracts, and people who pretended to be honest. We sat across from each other at his kitchen table. Tell me what happened. He said simply. I did. Every word, every detail. The job offer, the humiliation, the bathroom, the bucket of dirty water. I didn't leave anything out. By the time I finished, Darius's jaw was clenched tight. That man made your son scrub toilets? He said slowly, while his daughter watched. I nodded, and she laughed. He leaned back in his chair, shaking his head. That ain't a job. That's degradation. You know what this is, right? That man's playing power games. He's testing your boy, trying to make him feel small enough to break. My voice cracked. He already did. Darius was silent for a moment, then leaned forward. Isa, I built my company from the ground up, same way you raised that boy. I know men like Richard Pierce. They think they can buy respect, but they don't understand people like us are dangerous when you take everything from us. Because once you've got nothing left to lose, you start moving different. I met his gaze. Then teach me how to move. He smiled faintly. That's the Aisha I remember. That evening, I called Zion. He didn't answer the first time or the second. On the third ring, he finally picked up. Mama, he said softly. His voice was hoarse, exhausted. Baby, where are you? At work. Still here. At this hour? Yeah. Mr. Pierce said I had to finish cleaning the basement before I could leave. The basement? I said, anger burning in my chest. That's not your job, Zion. I know, Mama, but he said it's part of the process. He told me if I want to rise, I need to earn my way up from the ground, literally. He gave a small, broken laugh. Guess he wasn't kidding. Zion, listen to me. Quit that job, now. He was quiet. Then he said, I can't. Naomi's watching me. She said, if I leave, I'll embarrass her family. Embarrass them? I snapped. They humiliated you? You think you owe loyalty to people who see you as their entertainment? Mama, please, he whispered. Don't make this harder. I just need time. I can handle it. I took a deep breath. You're not handling it, baby. You're surviving it. And those are two very different things. He didn't answer. I could hear the sound of a mop bucket rolling across the floor, the clink of metal pipes in the background. Zion, I said, my voice trembling now. Come home. He was silent for so long I thought he'd hung up. Then finally he said quietly, I'll try. Mama, I'll try. But I knew he wouldn't. Over the next few days, I started digging. Darius helped me pull company records, old permits, tax filings, public complaints. We found more dirt on Pierce Industrial Group than I could have imagined. Wage violations, bribed inspectors, unsafe conditions at the manufacturing plant. See? Darius said, tapping the papers spread across his desk. You don't need fists to fight men like him. You need information. You need to make him choke on his own secrets. I stared at the files. So we build a case? He nodded, step by step. You collect, I connect. By the time we're done, he'll regret ever crossing your family. I smiled for the first time in days. Let's get started. Meanwhile, Zion's calls became shorter, more hollow. Naomi's different now, he said one night. She barely talks to me unless she's criticizing me. Says I smell like bleach when I come home. Says I make her feel poor. I clenched my fists. Leave her, Zion, please. I can't. Mama, I made vows. Baby, I said softly. Sometimes the only way to keep your soul is to break the promise that's killing it. He didn't respond up the next morning. I got a text from him starting earlier today. Mr. Pierce says he's evaluating me personally now. Maybe this is my chance to prove myself. I didn't reply. I just sat there staring at the screen, knowing what he couldn't yet see, that when a man like Richard Pierce says, prove yourself, it never ends with mercy. That was the moment I made a second promise, not to God, not to anyone else, just to myself. If Richard Pierce wanted to see what real strength looked like, I'd show him, but first I had to wait, because revenge, like justice, needs perfect timing. The next week felt like the air before a storm, still heavy, full of things nobody could see, but everybody could feel. Zion stopped answering my calls for a few days. Every time I reached voicemail, my chest tightened just a little more. I'd call again at night, praying he'd pick up. But all I got was silence. Then one evening around 9:30, my phone finally buzzed. Mama, he said, his voice low and tired. Baby, where have you been? I've been worried sick. He sighed. Sorry, things been rough. Mr. Pierce keeps giving me extra hours, says I'm not meeting expectations. I've been working 14-hour shifts. Some nights I sleep in the storage room because I can't afford to be late in the morning. I froze. You're sleeping at that place? Zion, that ain't work. That's cruelty. I know, he whispered. But Naomi said if I quit, her daddy'll cut us off. She wants to move into one of his condos, and he said we can't till I prove undependable. My blood ran cold. That man stringing you along? He's not testing you, Zion. He's breaking you. He didn't answer. Just breathed hard, quiet. Baby, I said softly, you come stay here tonight. You need rest. Real rest. He hesitated. I can't. Naomi took the car. She's out with her friends. And I gotta finish this floor by morning. That last sentence hit me harder than any scream could have. He didn't even sound angry anymore. Just emptied out the next morning, I called Darius. He's falling apart, I said, pacing the kitchen. That man's killing his spirit one task at a time. Darius leaned back in his chair, his tone calm but sharp. And that's how men like Richard Pierce control people. They take your pride, make you beg to get it back. So, what do we do? He smiled slightly. We give him what he deserves, quietly, smartly. For the next few days, we worked like shadows. Darius had connections, former employees, accountants, truckers who'd worked under Pierce Industrial before getting fired. One by one, they told the same story. Unpaid overtime, safety violations, fake expense reports. Darius collected it all in a neat black folder. You build pressure from the inside, he said. People like Pierce crumble when their money's in danger. You hit his reputation first, then his pockets. Meanwhile, Zion's condition kept worsening. He stopped visiting. His messages got shorter. His laughter disappeared. One evening, I decided to visit him unannounced. I packed a basket of food and took the long bus ride to his apartment. When he opened the door, my heart nearly broke. He looked hollow. His eyes were sunken, his cheeks drawn tight, his hands cracked from bleach and cleaning agents. His once proud posture was gone, shoulders slumped, voice faint. Zion, baby, I whispered, what have they done to you? He forced a smile. I'm fine, Mama. I stepped inside. Naomi was sitting on the couch in silk pajamas, scrolling her phone. She barely glanced at me. Evening, Mrs. Holt, she said coolly. Evening, I replied. You mind if I talk to my son alone? She didn't move. Anything you have to say, you can say in front of me. Zion looked down, embarrassed. I sighed. All right, then. Zion, you need to quit this job. It's not making you a man, it's making you a ghost. Naomi scoffed. He's fine. Daddy's just trying to toughen him up. Not everyone can handle real business. Real business. I snapped. Making him clean floors and scrub bathrooms? That's not business. That's humiliation. Naomi's voice turned cold. You wouldn't understand, Mrs. Holt. Daddy's methods are harsh, but they work. It's how real men rise. By crawling. I shot back. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut glass. Zion stood there frozen, caught between us. Like a man drowning while two people argued over whether he should swim. Finally, he said softly, Mama, please. I can't do this right now. The way he said it, quiet, broken, told me everything. I put the basket on the table. Eat something, baby. You look like you haven't slept in days. Naomi smirked. He's fine. I made a smoothie earlier. I looked her dead in the eye. A smoothie ain't gonna fix a soul that's starving. Then I turned to Zion. When you're ready to come home, your door's open. And I walked out. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by my window, city lights flickering in the distance, wondering where I went wrong. I'd raised a strong man, but love had turned that strength into chains. The next morning, I got another call from Darius. You might want to sit down, he said. What happened? I found something. Pierce Industrial's been falsifying state contracts, inflating supply numbers, pocketing government money. I got proof. Emails, documents, signatures, all of it. My heart started pounding. You're serious? Dead serious. This isn't just corruption, it's criminal. If this gets out, Richard Pierce loses everything. I gripped the phone. Good, then that's what we'll do. Darius paused. Slow down, Aisha. You don't want to blow this too fast. We need leverage, not headlines. You use his own dirt to make him bleed from the inside. I nodded, though he couldn't see me. Then show me how. He smiled. Oh, I will. But before we play the long game, you need to protect your boy. Because if Pierce feels cornered, he'll use Zion as his shield. And he was right, because the next day, When I tried calling Zion again, his phone went straight to voicemail. By evening, Naomi answered instead. Her voice was dry, almost amused. Oh, Mrs. Holt, didn't Zion tell you? Daddy transferred him to the main plant out in Macon. Said it's time he learned the grind. The plant? That's 3 hours away. She said, not a trace of concern in her tone. Daddy says it's the perfect place for him to toughen up. He'll be fine. Then she hung up. I stood there in my kitchen, staring at the silent phone in my hand. Heart pounding in my ears. Richard Pierce had just taken my son out of reach. And that meant one thing. The clock had started ticking. That night after Naomi's call, I sat alone at my kitchen table for hours. No TV, no music. Just silence, the kind that presses against your chest till it hurts. Zion was gone. 3 hours away in some factory I'd never seen, surrounded by men who probably treated him the same way his father-in-law did, like a burden. They couldn't wait to break, but this time, I wasn't helpless. Doris, and I had a plan. The next morning, I met him downtown at a little diner that smelled like coffee and grease. He was already there when I arrived, flipping through a folder thicker than a Bible. Morning, I said, sliding into the booth. He didn't look up. We've got him. Aisha. I pulled the numbers from the state records. Pierce Industrial's been double billing on their shipping contracts. Millions missing. All under the same signatures. I blinked. And you're sure it's him? He nodded. Oh, it's him. He's been using dummy companies in Tennessee and Alabama to reroute payments back into his private accounts. If this gets to the right people, he's done. I leaned back, stunned. So what's our next move? Darius closed the folder and looked me dead in the eye. We play chess, not checkers. You don't just hit a man like Richard Pierce head on. You make him bleed slow. I'll start leaking pieces of this to the right places, unions, auditors, maybe a journalist or two. But I need you to get proof from the inside. Something only Zion could reach. My stomach dropped. Zion's not safe already. You want me to pull him deeper? He sighed. Aisha, listen. That man put your son on his knees in a bathroom. If we don't fight now, he'll own him forever. You raised a warrior. We just have to remind him who he is. I stared at Darius's rough hands resting on that folder and nodded. Then let's do it. That evening, I called Zion. It took 5 tries before he answered. His voice was barely a whisper. Mama, baby, where are you right now? The plant, he said. It's loud here. Machines running all night? Zion, listen to me, I said. You remember Mr. Vaughn? The man I used to work for? Yeah, the truck company guy. He's helping me. We found something bad about Pierce Industrial. I need your help to get proof. Can you do that? He hesitated. Mama, please don't drag me into this. If Mr. Pierce finds out, baby, he already dragged you into it the moment he made you his slave. Don't you see that? You can't fix this by obeying him. You fix it by standing up. For a moment, all I heard was the hum of heavy machinery in the background. Then quietly, Zion said, What do you need me to do? Over the next few days, we worked in silence. Zion used his access card to scan old delivery logs and safety reports, sending copies to me in encrypted emails Darius set up. He sounded different every time we spoke, more focused, more awake, more like himself. Mama, he said one night, whispering through static, there's a shipment report dated last year, supposed to be 200 units delivered. But the ledger shows 350. The extras went to a warehouse that doesn't exist. That's it, baby, I said softly. That's exactly what we need. He laughed, a small, tired laugh, but real. Feels good to finally do something that matters. You always mattered, I whispered, but even in that small victory, I couldn't shake the feeling we were walking a thin wire over fire. Then came the storm. 2 nights later, Darius called me, his voice low and urgent. Aisha, something's happened. Someone tipped Pierce off. He's cleaning house, firing people left and right. Zion's name came up in a meeting. My blood froze. Oh Lord, no. You need to get him out of there, now. I hung up and called Zion immediately. No answer, called again. Still nothing. By the 6th try, a voice finally picked up, but it wasn't my son, Dot, it was Naomi. Well, Mrs. Holt, she said, her tone sugar sweet and cold. I told you this would happen if you didn't stay in line. What are you talking about? Where's my son? She gave a little laugh. Daddy found out he's been poking around places he shouldn't. He's being disciplined. Don't worry. He's safe. For now. My hands shook so hard I almost dropped the phone. If you hurt him, oh, please, she interrupted. Nobody's hurting anyone. But maybe next time he'll learn to respect his place. Then she hung up. I sat there in the dark, staring at my reflection in the black screen of my phone, and I knew this wasn't about proving a point anymore. It wasn't even about revenge, Dot. It was war, Dot. The next morning, I was at Darius's door before sunrise. He opened it, still half-dressed, but one look at my face and he didn't ask questions. It's time, I said. We're not waiting anymore. He nodded slowly. Then let's burn his empire to the ground. The day we closed the trap felt like walking into a courtroom with the verdict already written. Everything had to be clean, quiet, and professional. No theatrics, no loose ends. That was Darius's rule. He always said, let the paper do the work. So we let the paper burn. Darius arranged the notary room, small, neutral, fluorescent light humming over a long table. There were a few witnesses, the notary, 2 of Darius's trusted associates, and a quiet clerk who would sign only as procedure demanded. Opposite them sat Richard Pierce, flanked by his lawyer, the same smug smile he wore when he thought he still owned the room. He had on his best suit, the one that always made him feel bigger than the rest of us. He sat tall, fanning his hands as if to keep the chill from the air. I wore my Sunday coat, the one that said, don't underestimate me. I kept my face steady. Inside, my heart was a drum. Zion stood beside me, shoulders straight, but I could see the flicker of 1,000 small storms in his eyes. Darius sat close, papers stacked like ammunition between us. Richard's lawyer started the ritual, the corporate song of clauses and signatures, voices low and formal. Darius had done his work. The shell companies, the paper trail, the bank wires redirected. Every dotted I, every cross on the transaction had been calculated. The offer sat in front of Richard like a noose with a velvet ribbon. We were prepared to execute the transfer of majority interest in Pierce Industrial Group to Invest Active Holdings. The lawyer read, using the legal names as if naming a ceremony. Upon receipt of signed documents and transfer of funds, control will pass to the purchaser. Richard's jaw tightened. He glanced at his counsel, then at the file. Who is the actual principal? He asked, trying to sound casual but failing. Darius slid the folder forward. The principal is Invest Active Holdings, represented by its managing member. The documentation is in order. You can sign here. His voice was calm as a judge's. Richard reached for the pen with a hand that did not want to shake, but it did. He signed on the dotted line, his eyes flicking up only to the notary and then back down. He signed another sheet. The papers multiplied signature by signature until the room smelled faintly of ink and defeat. When the final signature was done, the notary announced it plainly. Transfer acknowledged. Effective immediately, Invest Active Holdings is the majority owner of Pierce Industrial Group. Richard froze like someone whose name was called in a game he thought he was winning. For the first time, the power in the room slipped. You could feel it, as if the air changed temperature. Darius leaned back, folded his hands, and gave me a small look. That was my cue. I think there's one thing the new owner should do before any decisions are made, Richard's lawyer said quickly, scrambling. But the voice that answered was mine, soft, cold, and steady. Yes, I said. I stood up and walked to the head of the table. Every eye found me. Richard's face went a color that didn't suit him. I am Aisha Holt, I announced, watching his mouth form the name like a curse. And effective now, I represent Invest Active Holdings. The room laughed once, a reflexive, nervous sound. Richard's lawyer sputtered. This is impossible. The ownership documents indicate a corporate entity. We need to verify beneficial owners. Darius cut him off. Mr. Pierce, the verification is complete. He tapped a printout on the table. Your liabilities, your backroom deals, and the transfer are all executed under law. You had your chance to save this. You blew it. Richard stood up as if to protest, but his voice was thin. Mrs. Holt, you don't understand corporate operations. You can't just watch me, I said. I looked at Zion. He stepped forward. Dad, he said quietly, because sometimes even men who've been betrayed need to hear their child's name straight. You taught me to stand up when it matters. He turned to me. Mama, what now? I had imagined this moment 1,000 times. The look on Richard's face as the scales tipped. The satisfied silence after the paper had decided that the reality was cleaner and meaner than I'd pictured. I spoke plainly, with no relish, because I wanted him to feel the full weight of the professional dismissal that matched his. Humiliation, effective immediately, I said. I relieve Richard Pierce of all executive duties at Pierce Industrial Group. Your access will be revoked. You will be escorted from company property. My office will contact your counsel regarding severance, if any. I watched him blink as if those words were hot coals. Shock turned to fury. His mouth opened, then closed. He lunged for the papers as if tearing them would rip the world back to how he liked it. You can't do this. He shouted, You don't have experience. I looked at him with the same quiet I'd used for years to keep my son steady. That man on his knees in your office, that's enough demonstration for me. Experience comes in many forms, Mr. Pierce. I've worked every job from the floor up. And I'll run this company with dignity, not with cruelty. He barked, and the room swelled with the sound of a man losing his kingdom. His lawyer found the right words to stall, to threaten litigation, to promise appeals and injunctions. Darius listened, unmoved, handing them copies of the transfer documents and the bank confirmations. The legalese snaked between them like a last defense against a tide already turned. All right. Richard spat finally, the composure of a man reduced to rage. If you're the owner, what are you doing here? You can't run a manufacturing firm. You don't know the first thing about production. I'd rehearsed the line in my head, but it felt small compared to what was real. I walked to the place where he'd stood when my son knelt, and let the bite of memory shape my next move. You're right. I don't know the first thing about letting a man humiliate my son in my company and get away with it. I turned and looked at the notary, then at the assembled witnesses. But I do know how to treat people like human beings. And I know how to clean up corruption. Effective immediately, Richard Pierce, you are terminated. He stumbled back, bewildered, then angry. You can't fire me in my own company, he yelled. I lifted my hand. You were fired before you were ever hired by the people who bankrolled this purchase. That's the legal reality, Mr. Pierce. My voice did not waver. For a charged second, the room felt like a theater. A man in the last act facing a jury he used to command. Then I did the thing I dreamed about in the cold hours after the restroom scene. I didn't gloat. I didn't scream. I offered him a paper-thin mercy that stung like an echo of his own cruelty. You know what would be poetic, I said, quiet enough to make the lawyer lean in. Why don't you accept the one position I can't imagine you like and maybe learn something from it? I'm offering you the role of custodial supervisor. You'll oversee janitorial standards across the plant. You'll report to operations and you'll clock in at the same time as everyone else. The gasp that followed was loud and animal. Richard's face went red, deeper than any suit could hide. Are you serious? He sputtered. Yes, I said. You will also receive training on workplace dignity. I want the man who forced my son to scrub toilets to understand two things: the value of labor and the cost of cruelty. He slammed his fist on the table so hard glasses trembled. You have no right, actually, Darius chimed in, folding his hands. The new board, led by Mrs. Holt, has every legal right. He slid across the signed transfer documents again and the bank confirmation. The transaction is complete. Richard stood, stumbling, failing at grandeur as his empire unraveled. He left that room with his lawyer at his elbow, mouth-forming threats that would never reach the place they could hurt me. When the door closed behind him, a strange hush fell. Zion sank into a chair like a man who'd been given both a weapon and a wound. I walked around the table to him, sat down, and took both his hands in mine. He was shaking, not from fear alone, but from the adrenaline of reclaiming what was his. I'm so proud of you, I said, the words true and steady. You did what you had to do. Zion looked at me, then at the printed stack that now bore my name at the top of the ownership file. He swallowed, the weight of the moment settling across his shoulders. Mom, he said softly, what do you want me to do next? I could have put him somewhere safe, given him a quiet role, sent him to school, let time stitch the wound. Instead, I offered him what he'd always deserved, but never been allowed to reach, while someone else towered over him. Come home with me tonight, I said. Sleep in your own bed. Then we'll talk about what leadership looks like when dignity leads the way. I smiled fierce and warm. When you're ready, I want you to try being CEO, not because of a title, but because you know what it's like to stand where we stood. This company needs someone who understands people, from the floor to the boardroom. He hesitated, the memory of that restroom floor still fresh in his eyes. Then he nodded, slow at first, then with a resolve that made me proud in a way that had nothing to do with money or power. Yes, he said. I'll try. Outside, the city kept moving, taxis honking, people rarely looking up from their phones. But inside that small notary room, after signatures had been made and empires had shifted, something else moved. A family beginning to put itself back together, and a man who once ruled by shame, reduced to nothing more than a cautionary tale. We left the building together, not as the Pierce family, but as the Holts walking toward a future they'd built from the floor up. The morning after the takeover, the sky over Atlanta was still gray with winter, but inside me it was calm for the first time in years. The storm was over. For months, I had moved through life like a woman made of iron, unbending, unflinching, running on fury and faith. Now that Sterling Pierce's empire was dust, the silence that followed felt like standing in the eye of a hurricane that had finally passed. I made breakfast for the first time in weeks, real breakfast, not coffee and prayer. Grits, eggs, biscuits. Zion came downstairs half asleep, wearing one of his old hoodies from college. Morning, Mama, he said softly. I smiled. Morning, baby. Sit down, eat. He sat, quiet at first, picking at his food. The light came in through the kitchen window, soft and forgiving. You sleep okay? I asked that. He nodded. Yeah, first time I didn't dream about that place. I reached across the table and took his hand. That place don't exist for us anymore, son. We took it back. He let out a long breath, half laugh, half sigh. You really bought his whole company, Mama. You actually did it. I didn't just buy it, I said. I fixed it. He looked up, eyes steady. You fixed me too. That broke me a little, because all that vengeance, all that planning, it wasn't about power. It was about seeing my son remember who he was before the world tried to grind it out of him. Later that week, I stood outside the factory for the first time since the takeover. The air smelled of oil and metal. Workers moved with a new rhythm, freer, louder, human. A few of them recognized me. "Morning, Mrs. Holt," one said, tipping his cap. Another woman waved from the loading dock. "You really cleaned house," she said, grinning. I smiled back. "That's what I do best." Inside, Zion was walking the floor in a crisp gray suit. Not fancy, just right. He stopped to talk to workers, ask questions, laughed with them. That laughter used to sound fragile. Now it filled the room. Darius joined me by the door, hands in his coat pockets. "He's good at this," he said. "He was always good," I replied. "He just needed to remember it." "You did what you said you would," Darius added. "You made him pay." I looked across the floor at the new nameplate on the wall. Holt Industries. "Yeah," I said softly. "But I didn't destroy him for revenge. I destroyed him for justice." A week later, word got out. Sterling Pierce was seen at a small community supply company on the edge of town, mopping floors. Not by choice. It was part of the deal that kept him from prison. Sometimes poetic justice writes itself. Naomi called me the same night. Her voice trembled. "You're a monster," she hissed. "No," I said calmly. "I'm a mother." And I hung up. That spring, Holt Industries opened a new division focused on ethical manufacturing, fair pay, clean working conditions, equal opportunity. Zion ran it with a steady hand, not out of pride, but purpose. At the ribbon cutting, he stood before the crowd and said, "This company doesn't belong to one man's ego anymore. It belongs to the people who build it every day." When he looked at me, I saw the boy who once promised he'd make my life easier. And now he truly had. After the ceremony, I walked out to the garden behind the plant. The same sun that had once glared down on Sterling's empire now felt warm and gentle on my face. Darius joined me again. "You ever think about what's next?" he asked. I smiled faintly. "Rest, maybe travel. Maybe finally learn to dance again." He laughed. "You earned it." "Maybe," I said. But I didn't do it to earn anything. I did it so my son would never kneel again. We stood there a while longer, watching the flags ripple in the wind, no longer Thorn Manufacturing, but Holt Industries, flying proud over the same ground where humiliation once lived. That night, when the house was quiet, I opened my old Bible and slipped a photo between its pages, a photo of Jerome as a boy, smiling with a missing front tooth. Underneath it, I wrote, "He kneeled once. Never again." Then I closed the book and whispered to the dark, "Thank you, God, for giving me the strength to make him stand." And for the first time since that awful day in the restroom, I slept not as a woman plotting revenge, but as a mother finally at peace.